we have 0 right now. So,
Thank you. I have one question, if that was possible. The first treatment plant in our valley here in Santa Clarita area, when was that open?
I think 1962, if memory serves me.
Yeah, because when I was growing up here in the 60s, sometimes there would be water in this river, and sometimes, a lot of times, it would be completely dry. And so, what was the discharge when we first started?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the population growth and bringing imported water down here that's resulted in more water in the river, and you have an artificially created habitat, in essence, due to the importation, use, and discharge of imported water and pumped groundwater. But once you create habitat with a discharge, there can become an obligation to maintain it.
Can become an obligation, or is an obligation?
It becomes an obligation.
Is it an obligation for us to put 1 drop of water back into the river?
Yes.
And how much?
To my knowledge, based on the modeling work that we've done, something in that range of 7 to 10 million gallons per day is the determination that's been tentatively made. Castaic Lake has been working to assess that for its recycled water master planning process.
Federal. This is a federal. Is this a federal issue? As far as keeping the water
I think
in?
Again, the Clean Water Act and Porter Cologne are kind of parallel statutes with very similar requirements.
Hi, my name is Nicole Granquist. I'm special counsel to the district. I wanted to answer your question just so you did get it answered. The issue about water remaining in the river, that is a state requirement. That's based on what we call an application to the State Water Board under Water Code 1211. And that's when you go and say, I want to remove my water from the river. And they have the ability, based on habitat, ecosystems that have developed, etc., to require that you keep a certain level of water in the river. So that's the process. It is a state process. So
we've spent a lot of time and taxpayer money then getting to that, but you don't have a number.
Oh, then there's no formula. It is site specific. It is different in every case. I've been involved in several, and they are all wildly different, and it's based on the species and the habitat and the conditions, so there's no formula.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you. Maureen?
Well, we'll probably have to have Mr. Priest come back up, but I just wanted to bring up a couple things. The Santa Clara River is designated a navigable river because it is connected to the Pacific Ocean according to federal standards. And even if you were able to take half of the water out, or more than half, every gallon of water that you would want to put in, wouldn't it still have to be at the 100 milligram?
Different reaches have different...
No, I meant what we would end up putting in the river fill would still have to meet the state regional water requirements?
Yes, I mean, the requirements are for your discharge.
Right.
You wouldn't have to meet that for recycling, but
No.
for your discharge to the river, whatever the objective is where you discharge, that's how they set your permit limits.
So out of 26 and 32, end of the pipe would have to be 100 milligrams,
Yes, ma'am.
regardless if you took and said, gee, I'm going to put purple pipe all over the valley, and somehow I'm going to use, 12, 13, 14 million gallons of water today, even in high rain. You still have to put in, if you were on the process that they had us on, you would still have to put in reverse osmosis in order to remove the salt. I think the good news for Santa Clarita is that we have been the only city and district that I know of in the nation that has embarked upon stress control. Stress control was an incredibly important part of this because we're not at over 200. We're at 117, 120, and that probably shocked regional water. It did help us dramatically reduce what would have to be. But I wonder if you could state just for a second what potentially there might have been in terms of carbon footprint, were we back at the original alternative water project where you were going to have to do all that reverse osmosis with the carbon footprint, what it would actually cost to operate that. So we're not there now, but where we would have been, I think there's a huge concern about future fuel costs and carbon footprint.
So the amount of reverse osmosis that we think that we would need today, based on the water quality conditions that we have today, based on water softener removal and the improvements in the delta that have occurred.
Well, I wanted to start with where we were, because we've done those improvements.
Well, I'm trying to back
Okay, you can
back into that. We think that today's project to meet 100 requires about 7 mgd of reverse osmosis, but where we were was 19 mgd of reverse osmosis, so almost 3 times the added carbon footprint based on the prior conditions.
That was a dramatic shift in the direction of what it costs to operate, what it costs to build, what it takes for infrastructure, all of those things. So that's been a very positive thing. Has Regional Water looked at that at all and said, gee, Santa Clarita, you've come down, 50 milligrams, you've made the river better. I understand that downstream is actually already improved in the water basin. And have they acknowledged that at all?
I haven't received any compliments from the regional board regarding the chloride.
I just wanted to find out if there was something in there that we didn't know about. But I think that the fact that it has gone down almost 2/3 is a tremendous cost benefit.
I think they have acknowledged the progress the city has made with water softener removal. I shouldn't make a joke out of it. It's very significant progress. They have acknowledged it. But in the same sentence, they always add, that your obligation remains.
I understand they have stuck to their obligation remains. It's 100. We're not moving off of that. On the issue of studies, which would be really nice, would you have to do studies if they would give you time, which they haven't agreed to do? And Marcia met with the governor's office, and we have not been given any opportunity for that. Would you have to do those studies, say, the exact same type of crops that they're using in the exact same climate locations to prove that there was a commonality between your studies and the reality of what's being produced by the farmers on the ground? And how long would that take to do several years of strawberry crops? And then how would you deal with the avocados, which are a really slow growing plant? And where would you do that? Because it'd have to be done in accordance with something that they would lay out.
I think that because there's so many varieties of strawberries, the determination that the agricultural consultants made was that they were just going to focus on the Mexican rootstock avocado and say that water quality that would be protective of that would be protective also of most varieties of strawberry and also protective of nursery crops, which was the other salt-sensitive crop grown in the valley. And so what we would have to do is field studies using Mexican rootstock avocado plants. And I would think they would have to be multi-year studies. And Mr. Boydston is correct with regard to the threshold that's been set was just about leaf tip burn, and they did not have a correlation with crop yield. And so I don't know what it would take to convince the farming community to accept a higher standard. What kind of study output would convince them that a higher standard adequately protects their crops? You do a study and then you debate what the results showed, and hopefully you'd get adjustment. But it would be a multi-year study using Mexican rootstock avocado conducted in this same location, in this area.
And then if the Bay Delta project was here today, or if it was coming in the next few years, I know it's probably 10 years away, the water would be coming in at what level for it?
Maybe 20 or 30,
And we add what, 45?
45.
And you add some for, you know.
Even if we continued to use bleach to disinfect, we'd
But you're
add
not.
10. Well, we're talking about going to UV as part of
Which drops
the
another
compliance
5
project.
or 10. But it would come in at probably 20, and therefore there wouldn't be an issue.
We'd meet the 100 milligram per liter standard without any advanced treatment, yes.
Boyson? I'm sorry, you're through?
Oh, I'll catch up, one more question.
Boyson?
I just had a question that Lorraine was asking. If you take water from the treatment plant and put it in purple pipe, which is something that we use to talk about a pipe that runs reclaimed water, and you don't dump it into the river, but you put it on a golf course, then those levels are not applicable to the water, isn't that correct?
That is correct, but you will have a reuse permit with its chloride limits, and we have 100 milligram per liter chloride limits in some of our reuse permits, but not others. As part of the AWRM project, we got some groundwater basin limits adjusted to 150 so that we would be compatible with our 150 milligram per liter discharge limit at the point of discharge of the plants. So we would be able to have, the idea was you'd have 150 milligram per liter recycled water and 150 milligram per liter water quality objectives in the groundwater. Those are compatible water quality objectives with the idea that the recycled water could be 150. But you have to have groundwater basin objectives that are compatible with your reuse permit limit.
But it's a different
It's a
it's a different permit and a different number.
Correct.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Yeah, and I guess the real question is, the jurisdiction is entirely regional water, and they're basically under the guidelines of the EPA. So if regional water wants to give you time, they can. If they don't want to give you time, they can do that too.
I think that's a fair statement.
If there was, do we know of any communities that have litigated against the Clean Water Act, the 1972 Clean Water Act with the EPA, that have successfully changed the Clean Water Act?
I'd defer to council on that question. I'm not aware that you can change the Clean Water Act readily.
Good afternoon again, Nicole Grant with Special Counsel for the district. There's a variety of litigation activities involving the Act. One of them did involve the LA County Sanitation Districts about, I'm going to say 12 years ago, 11 years ago now, where the County Sanitation Districts, along with the City of LA, City of Burbank, and City of Simi Valley, challenged action by EPA under the Clean Water Act, and we were successful in that challenge. So those things do happen, but it is specific to the issue and the likelihood of success as to whether or not a challenge is going to be successful based on what we lawyers like to call deference to the agencies. And there are a lot of reasons why you sue and don't sue in certain circumstances. So the answer to your basic question is, yes, folks do sue. Yes, they can be successful depending upon the subject matter. It doesn't change the Clean Water Act itself. It doesn't change the legislation, but it changes how it's implemented on a site-specific basis.
So, do you have any comments on what they're doing in the different reaches, trying to meet the standard for EPA?
I want to make sure I understand what your question is
Well,
before I
I guess the
answer.
question is, what you just said leads people to believe that you can sue on this and you can potentially maybe win, which is the first time I've heard counsel say that.
Well, The issue that I was referencing in terms of the suit that I was just talking about was not chloride. It wasn't this basin plan provision. There's a variety of reasons why you may or may not decide to do that in this circumstance. There has been a lot of time that has passed, and whether or not and what you can sue on at this point is a subject that we can continue to discuss.
Excuse me, Nicole. At this point, I think
Yeah.
we're starting to cross into
Agreed.
areas that we need to preserve for our closed session.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
I would have a further question in that, are you familiar with the appeals process for limits actually to the Water Quality Control Board?
Yep.
And some of these appeals have been successful where they've changed those limit numbers?
Yeah, the process, just so that you know, the process when you receive a discharge permit with a limit that you can't comply with or don't otherwise like, you file a petition to the to the State Water Resources Control Board. And the permits in this case, the Saugus and Valencia permits, that petition did occur on the earlier permits. And that's what was resolved in Mr. Freese's presentation. That's what was resolved in 2008 with the AWORM project and the change to the permits, the change to the TMDL, the change to the site-specific objectives in the basin plan. So yes, you file that with the State Water Board. And if you proceed, if you are unsuccessful or you otherwise dislike the State Water Board's decision in that context, then you can go to Superior Court and file what we call a writ.
And it doesn't preclude you from doing an appeal based on another set of facts, as in, you say you want to do an appeal based on science, and you say that the elements that are here, whatever you appealed on last time, but you have new evidence or evidence that you're going to bring in an appeal from a scientific standpoint. Since you have new grounds, you are able to appeal that again, is that correct?
For a permit, you have to appeal within 30 days of its issuance.
So you can't appeal that level, you're saying, with that same board, you would have to go to court?
Once you have to appeal within 30 days, and then after the State Water Board decides your issue, after that 30 days you have to file a writ. And if you don't have the sequence of those things, then you have to find other ways. And it's probably best that we talk about that.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to do that this time. I was just trying to look at the different options.
There are very strict rules procedurally as to when you can and can't appeal, and we're certainly in that situation.
If I may, maybe move forward. City Council recommended action. City Council received report from the Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation District Staff regarding a notice of administrative civil liability complaint issued by the LA County Regional Water Quality Control Board, and directs staff to submit a letter on behalf of the city to the executive officer of the LA County Regional Water Quality Control Board. I would ask that with that recommendation, what modifications we might choose to make or suggestions to staff of what the containment of that letter might be. And before we move forward, I want to express a sincere appreciation to representatives of the Sanitation District. You obviously have been grilled rather thoroughly, I believe, but I sincerely want to express our appreciation for your taking time and giving us a very professional report. Thank you. Council?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to include three things, and before I do that, I also want to thank the board. And I know, that I don't want you to think that I'm on the opposite side, because I know that you were on the same side that I'm on now, and you fought really, really hard in the past. But I think that it's time to fight really, really hard in the future. So, all the things that we've done, and I think we also owe every option to our citizens, because I know Mayor Keller, you and Ms. West were very active the last time around when the state legislation went through, and we thought that the whole problem was going to be solved. It was right in the paper and everything. We're going to solve our problem so we don't have to build this chloride thing. And so everybody's got to take out their softeners, their salt-based water softeners. And I know that a lot of citizens out there pay for that on a regular basis by having to change out their fixtures and a whole bunch of other things. So we thought that solved it. And apparently the limit's still not low enough. So I think that if we could please have within that letter, the city council recommend that the sanitation board contest the fine, appeal the chloride level based on science, and pursue every legal remedy.
Can I city manager question? Are we looking for direction from council now regarding a letter before we go into session on the San District's legal?
I know we're walking a very fine line here, and
No, can I just clarify? I just want to sort of, I know that there are council members who also serve on the sanitation board, and there is a sanitation district board meeting after this meeting. So it's important to keep the line clear where we can. So the issue in terms of what the city can do in this letter is the letter was going to go to the Regional Water Quality Control Board as a letter of an interested party or interested person to contest or challenge the proposed fine. So I think the contesting the fine element that you're requesting fits within that. Appealing the chloride level and pursuing every legal remedy seems like direction to the Sand District Board rather than a protest to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. I don't think that you need to exclude those topics, but we maybe need to recast them slightly to indicate that we believe as a city, if this is what you feel, that to the extent it's possible to still revisit the chloride level and get a review based on science, I think is what you referred to, as well as to exhaust whatever avenues are necessary to ensure that happens. If that could be put in the letter, I think that casts it a little bit more as coming from the city to the Regional Water Quality Control Board.
But, yeah, obviously we want to not run afoul of the law in any way about doing this, but I want the distinction, and everyone to know the distinction here is the city council, us, the city council, and I'm not on the sanitation board, is writing a letter with reference to this fine on behalf of looking after our citizens and the people that we represent as a city.
Exactly.
So that we're saying, as a city, our stand is this, even though that might not be the sanitation board's stand. So I don't think that it's proper that if a sanitation board member wants to take exception to what goes into the city. In fact, I'm not sure they're even able to vote. Are they able to vote on what goes into this letter since it is applicable to their agency? Or does one of them have to recuse themselves?
Well, no, I think again, to the extent that the city is stating position as to what the city believes should happen on behalf of its residents, everybody can participate. When the Sand District board members are making decisions as Sand District board members, under the law, they exercise their independent judgment. And they need to do what they feel is in the best interest of the constituents of the Sand District. And they will do that regardless of what the city council decides to do in this letter. So I just want to make that clear.
It's completely clear to me. I just wanted to know, I just understand that there is perhaps the majority of the city council might not be the same majority that sits on the Sand District. You understand what I'm saying? That our interests, as we see them, for our citizens, might be at a different level or might have a different take than what the sanitation district members, of which there are 2 city council people. And so what I'm trying to say is that I would like this as much as we can put into the letter, because I believe that any of those things that we talk about goes, and that's our message. That's our message to the Water Quality Control Board from the city, not from the sanitation.
I think we understand.
Okay.
And just a quick comment. I don't believe you're hearing a loud outrage over some of your concerns. I think there's a realization here that city, sanitation board, and other stakeholders have been working extremely hard on this matter. I would hope that the folks in the room would have an appreciation for the complexity of this matter, and it's been going on for many years. The city has never taken a position that was contrary to the interest and the protection of our citizens. But if you listen to all that has been said, I think it's quite clear that the city has been put in a very difficult and compromising position, one that we have worked so hard to try and win. And you're talking about, as you were expressing, Mr. Boyston, frustration, you bet. Very frustrated. And I would hope, and I maybe just had to leave the room, but I'm so pleased to see our assembly members here in the room, because I can't think of anything more important than a clear message of the leadership in Sacramento of the kind of problem that is being cast upon this community, and I dare say how many other communities up and down the state of California. So I share in your concerns, but I just want to let the citizens we're wrestling with this, we're doing the best we can, and it's been a team effort. I appreciate the sanitation district. I appreciate the community involvement. And if I don't turn this microphone over to Lorene West right now, I'm going to be in big trouble. So Lorene.
I'm glad you have such a wonderful sense of humor, Bob. It's a pleasure. I'd just like to say Santa Clarita has done an amazing job of working through a technically difficult and legally challenging problem for a lot of years, and we've done a really good job. There is an EIR process that the public's involved with going on right now, which is looking for the most environmentally sensitive and least costly project solution that can be found, and it does take time to do that. And we have, we do need a letter. I think it's important for the city residents to be able to send a letter because they have worked hard and they have a right to expect that regional water should know that, one, we've worked hard, but it's a good idea that they know that we continue to support a solution that works toward reducing costs, but also maintaining, and this is really important, maintaining local control of the board so that the community can be in control of their destiny, because there are other communities that have lost that control, and then a trustee just walked in and just said, oh, well, I'm just doing this project, and they got to pay not only fines, but they got to pay for a project they didn't want, and it cost ungodly amounts of money, and they had absolutely no say-so, and that is absolutely the problem. So I think a letter that says to Regional Water, you know, we have concerns, we're working on solutions, we want to do absolutely what's best for our community, and absolutely are working toward resolution, and we want to maintain a good relationship and find a solution that works for us. And I think that's appropriate to do.
Move the recommended action.
And I'll second. Can I just add one thing? The letter that we send from the city's behalf needs to be as short and succinct as possible, because they probably won't like a lot of words. But I think we need to state that on behalf of our residents, we are asking for further consideration of this fine, and the fact that our residents have been asked to step up to the plate with the removal of the water softeners, and we would like to have some information based on scientific research as to the levels. So I'm hoping that those things will be able to be put into the letter.
We have a motion and a second. Mayor?
We do. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Councilmember McLean?
Yes.
Councilmember Ferry?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem West?
Aye.
Councilmember Boydston?
Yes.
Mayor Keller?
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, there being no further business, we will adjourn. I want to once again express my appreciation for being here. While you were out, we made comment about your being here. You've got a lot of work in front of you, my friend. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, just close up.